Cool. So I'll Slack this command out, but basically I'm going to run a command that takes all the files that are in this Nightwatch setup and puts them in my Galvanize personnel folder. Because basically I want all these files as they are, but inside of Galvanize personnel, so I can actually run those tests against Galvanize personnel. So I'll Slack out this command in a second, but basically it's going to, that wouldn't do it. It's going to clone that file down, copy the files into this specific folder, then do an npm install, and then I should be able to do it. I'll Slack the command out in a bit. So okay, now inside of this Galvanize personnel folder, I'm going to run npm test, and hopefully it will work. But those are just the default tests, right? Those ones from that come with the thing, right? If I look in here, those two tests are in there. So I'm just going to delete one. And now here, I want to write a test that does this stuff for the index.html. So right in here, when the page loads, I want to fill in the first name. So I'll visit localhost 8080. I'll assert, well, no, I won't assert. I will, let's get the code for filling in a form. Yeah, I will set the value. So right here, I'm going to say input name equals first name. And this has to match my HTML. So if I look at the HTML, this name is first name, lowercase name. I'm going to set the value CJ. Oh, first name.
I was about to say it's still first name.
Yeah, so set first name to CJ, set last name to R, set the role. Is it? Oh, wow, that's really inconsistent. Okay. Should be a capital N. And then the role, I don't know, what are the roles? Support. But actually, what values am I setting? I don't even know. Because the value needs to match the value of the select box. So if we look at these, yeah, value matches the text. So we'll set value to tank. We then will click on the submit button. And in this case, I want to click. Yeah, it's the only button on the page, so that would work. This right here is basically just a CSS selector. Because that's the only button that will match, that will do it. Okay, so when I run the tests, it's going to spin up, it's going to fill out the form, and then it's going to click the button. Let's see what happens. It didn't spin up. And actually, okay, that's not running. Cool. Localhost 8080. Oh, it's running the stuff from the source file. I don't want that. If I go to my gulp file, the root should be there instead. Go. Hey? Hey? Okay. Unable to locate input role. Cool. Because this is not an input, this is a select, right? Okay. Run the tests. Whoa! It worked. Thank you. Thank you. But now we want to assert some things, right? So that worked and all, but let's make sure that the actual request came back. So afterwards, let's look how I did it in here. Click the button, and then assert, not that the URL contains, I want to assert that the page contains. So let me see. actually visible. I want to make sure that the success message is visible, right? So we'll click the button. Actually, I'll wait for element to be visible. And here it's the save status. So initially it's not visible, and then it is visible. So we'll do wait for save status to be visible. And we will then assert that so dot assert. So I want to assert that save status contains text.
A bunch of methods chained together.
It is. So, and that's how Nightwatch works. Basically, browser represents the browser itself, and then each thing that you're adding onto it is just chaining method calls to test those things as well.
They have to be in a certain order, too.
Yes, yeah. So this is kind of like top-down how the test should run. First, you fill in the form, then you click the button, then you wait for it to be done, and then you make sure that, yeah, so it has to be in the exact order. Let me see what I'm setting the... Does anyone remember what the success message is?
Success.
Capital success, lowercase success. Actually, let's just type it wrong and it should fail. Right? Cool. npm test. Okay. Expected element to be visible but got not found. Timed out while waiting for element save status. Oh, this should be dot save status because it's a class selector. That was trying to do an element selector. Okay. Testing if element contains success, expected success, but got success, capital. So we need to test for what it actually is. So success with an exclamation mark, npm test. Yay! Cool. Yeah, thank you. So that's cool and all, but now we could do a test to see if it fails. Like, what if you don't set any inputs and then you click the button? We want this to say not quite, right? And this should be invalid personnel form. So now when I do npm test, it should run both of them. It's going to do the first one, which fills everything out. It's good. And then we'll do the second one. This time it just clicks it. Expected not quite, but got not quite. So in this case, I can do not quite. So the first test will run, loads the page, fills things out. Cool. The second page will run. Not quite. Successful. Cool. So, question.
Is there a way to just confirm whether or not a GET request came back with a response or fail without it explicitly printing a confirmation message on the page?
So for an end-to-end test, you may not be looking for a message on the page, but you may check to see if the elements have been appended to the page. Yeah, so like you might say like make sure that the body has a specific title of an event that you know should be there. Yeah, that's really the only issue with end-to-end tests. It's like you're not testing the actual GET request. Testing the actual GET request would be more of a unit test. It's a little more than a unit test because it is making the API request, but specifically for that, you would make sure that after the request, there are like X number of divs on the page. Or if you know that element has a certain class name, you would make sure that there are X number of elements that have that class name on the page, that kind of thing. Because if you're waiting for the request to complete and then making sure that the values are on the page, you know that it was successful. One thing, you'll have to look at the Nightwatch documentation. There might be a wait for network. So basically, it'll detect if AJAX requests are happening. And you'll basically say, wait for the network. When all requests are done, then make my checks. Because at that point, you know that the API request is done. Let's see if there is anything like that. Network, request, pause, submit form, switch window, wait for element present. Yeah, and so in this case, if you know approximately how long your GET request is going to take, you might do wait for element present and specify a number of milliseconds that are more than it will actually take. The only thing is that's kind of like fickle, because if the network is ever down or something like that, the test is going to fail. But that's one way to do it. Cool. Any other questions or comments about end-to-end tests? Will, go.
Also, like, would you be running both of these, the first kind of tests and end-to-end tests at the same time? Or,
You mean like unit tests and?
yeah, or is like unit tests like earlier in the process, and this is more like a finished app context for testing?
Yes, that one. So unit tests are like when you're writing small functions, small code, you can run those every now and then, make sure everything's working. End-to-end tests come at the end when everything is fully put together. You're making sure that the whole flow is there. Typically, the flow would be like in development, you're kind of just running unit tests as you're writing your code, and then you would run something like end-to-end tests before deploying to production. Like you run your end-to-end tests, make sure everything's good, and then push up to Firebase or something like that.
Like once you're to the end-to-end phase of testing, it's kind of arbitrary
But
to go back and use it.
I wouldn't say that. So it's a continuous cycle. Like you would write your unit tests, make sure those run. You're ready to deploy. You have your end-to-end tests, but you're always going back and forth and like adding new tests and updating. It's not like a when you're done with this, do that kind of thing. Yes.
This is kind of a specific one, kind of not, I guess. So I got something happening on key up, so it is actually typing things in, so that will trigger.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, it would.
Okay.
Yeah, so it literally is sending keyboard presses. So if you have events like key up, key down, those will fire.
Okay, great.
Yep. Any other questions or comments before I have you all try this?
I don't like how Word doesn't take these data and
Okay. All right. Here's what I want you all to do. I want you to find your Galvanize personnel folder and prepare it. Give me like 2 minutes, and then I'll have a command that you can run to try the same thing.